letter to her father.
Hello and welcome, beautiful people and my fellow night owls, to another Meaningful Conversations, a Savage Bull Entertainment production. I'm your host, Dr. L, and I hope that you are winding down from a productive and positive day. And even if your day was crappy or you had a lot on your mind and still have a lot on your mind, I hope after joining me in tonight's episode of Meaningful Conversations, you'll feel lighter, happier, and more inspired. Meaningful Conversations is grown folk business. It is a show that is designed to engage grown folk or adults in conversations worth having about all things social, political, health, and spiritual. The airwaves and television channels are saturated with things that have no value in my perspective or from my perspective to your mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Now, this is not one of those shows. Together, we will explore and discuss topics that help to promote health and wellness, increase your knowledge, sharpen your critical analytical skills, and provide you with tools and information that help you think, be, and live better. Some topics, I'll admit, will inspire you. Some will make you laugh. Others, I hope, will make you be spitfire mad and come to some resolution that it's okay. Anger sometimes is good, you know. And also, I'm hoping really that some topics will leave you better than when you entered the conversation. So let's settle in and get started tonight with the show. February, it's still February, and February, as we all know, or at least I hope we all know, is Black History Month. Tonight's topic is artists as revolutionaries. I am so excited to have as a guest for tonight a dear friend of mine who will be joining us shortly, who is an amazing artist, astute critical thinker, and a sage. And a sage, for those of you who don't know, is one such as a profound philosopher, distinguished for wisdom. This is according to Miss Wikipedia, of course. A mature, a venerable person of sound judgment. But before my friend comes on, let's talk about, or let me sort of unpack this notion of what artists as revolutionaries is. I believe that artists are the pulse of every social and political movement. And when the artists are silent, the movement is either on life support, dying, or dead. That's right. It's the artist that taps into the spirit of revolutions and movements, social justice movements. It's the artists that we can read the tea leaves from. It's the artists who help us to distinguish which way the wind is blowing. So artists as revolutionaries, I think, is an important topic for us to have, considering where we are in our social and political environment today. Miss Wikipedia also defines a revolutionary as a person who either participates in or advocates a revolution. Also, when used as an adjective, the term revolutionary means something that has a major or sudden impact on society or some aspect of human endeavor. I hope you got all that. I'm reading this from Wikipedia. So when I think of artists as revolutionaries, I think first and foremost of the artists of the Harlem Renaissance. I also think specifically of artists, poets, the writers like James Baldwin, Zora Neale Hurston, Rita Dove, Langston Hughes, Jacob Lawrence, photographer Gordon Parks, Nikki Giovanni, Lucille Clifton, Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, Octavia Butler, Lorraine Hansberry, one of my favorites. I also think of the musicians, right, as artists. Miles Davis, Aretha Franklin, Marvin Gaye, Let's Get It On and What's Going On, Leontine Price, Curtis Mayfield, James Brown. You get where I'm going, right? The list goes on and on. I even think of artists as revolutionaries when I think of the founders of hip hop, the early hip hop, right? So my husband calls the rap music that's out today, a lot of it, he says it's not rap, it's crap. And that's because he and I both came up in an era when the message in hip hop, again, was an indication of where and how we were living in a society and in our society. And it was the message, and in a lot of ways, our news report, our news stories of what was going on in the hood or what was going on in streets across America as it related to the conditions and the affairs of Black folk, or as W.E.B. Du Bois would say, the souls of Black folk. I also think about many of today's amazing artists and who are indeed revolutionary. And I started making my list, including, our North Carolina poet laureate, Jackie Shelton Green, and I think of C.J. Suit, and I think of so many, and I knew I would get in trouble starting that list. So really just people who are using their gifts as artists to speak to the conditions and to highlight the conditions of the world, and also to be the voice for people who are not able to have a platform. And so artists as revolutionaries is extremely important to where we are today in terms of determining whether or not we're going forward as a society, backwards as a society, whether or not there's hope, whether or not people are barely hanging on, but there's hanging on, as Dr. Cornel West says, hanging on with hope on a tight rope. And so there are many, many that we can talk about. Alice Walker once said that healing begins where the wound was made. It's the artists that sort of give message to who we are and how we're feeling and how we got to the places that we got to. And so tonight we're going to talk to someone that I definitely consider as an artist revolutionary. And he is a great friend of mine, and he will be joining us in probably about 2 minutes. And I would like to go ahead before we dive into that conversation, because I know it's going to be good, y'all, to tell you just a little bit about my dear friend, Freedom Clay. But before I do that, because I want him to hear all the wonderful things I say about him. So before he calls in and before I do that, I want to say today is Don't Cry Over Spilled Milk Day. So I know that's a quick detour into something else, but I meant to get that out at the front. So just hang in there with me. Today is Don't Cry Over Spilled Milk Day. And it's also Make a Friend Day. And I think these two really go hand in hand, right? So one, don't sweat the small stuff. Don't cry over spilled milk. Wipe it up, clean it up, and keep it moving, right? And also Make a Friend Day. And I think that's important, especially in this era where we are social distancing and there are so many people that are lonely and isolated. And so I encourage you to reach out to somebody. Pick up the phone and dial a random number and ask them, say, hey, I'm looking for a new friend. Where are you? Who are you? Do you need a new friend? And so with that, I hear the phone ringing, and that means our guest for tonight may be calling in. But yeah, make a friend. Pick up the phone if you don't know who to make a friend with. Dial some random digits and say, hey, I am following a challenge to make a new friend. This is National Make a Friend Day. And then, like I said, don't cry over spilled milk. And so we're going to go into a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to go into a quick break. And when we come back, we will have my dear friend, Freedom Clay, on the line to talk to us tonight about artists as revolutionaries.
Good evening, Raleigh. Here's a look at the weather. We have rain showers, and it's 39. Wind is from the northeast at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Tonight, a few showers with a low in the low 30s. Wind will be from the northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Then tomorrow, a few showers with a high in the upper 30s. Wind will be from the northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Tomorrow night, a few showers with a low in the mid-30s. When you need the latest weather information, tune to Oak 93.5.
Let's come alive. Oak 93.5.
All right, we are back, and I think my good friend is on the line. Hello, Freedom Clay. Are you there?
I am. Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you for hanging out with me tonight and agreeing to call in. I'm so grateful for you spending some time with me tonight, and I just want to thank you for accepting the call to sit in and to help us have a discussion about artists as revolutionaries. But before we get there, let me just read a little bit of your bio. I already told people that how wonderful you were and how I consider you as not only an amazing artist, but such a wise sage. And I unpacked all of that, what sage means. But let me start first. I'm sorry. I'm sitting up here reading Afro as Adam. Don't get me started and don't start laughing. There's a inside joke that we have about some nail polish, and it doesn't take much for us to start cracking up. So let me try and stay professional and do Savage Bull Entertainment's justice here as their host for this show. All right.
That's right. I'm going to try to keep you on task.
Yeah, please keep me on task because, we will go there, right? We will definitely go there. So Freedom Clay, let me just read a little bit about my wonderful friend. For more than 25 years, Freedom Clay has worked in the human services field with special emphasis in social work and public health. And that's actually the space that we met. Our paths or our stars crossed. His focus has been in family development research, family program development and coordination, adult and child mental health services and HIV, focusing on education, research, consumer service coordination, project management, counseling, and testing. He has worked in diverse environments, including nonprofit agent organizations, the private sector, university settings, including North Carolina Central University and UNC. Both are my alma maters, and in state and county government. Freedom Clay holds a Bachelor of Science in Social Work with a concentration in health education from UNC Greensboro and a Master of Science degree in adult education from North Carolina A&T State University, which is my husband's alma mater. His body of work Yeah, go Aggies, Aggie Pride. His body of work continues to celebrate the multidimensional facets and the plight of Black people in America by celebrating and affirming their beauty and humanity. This is largely done by creating paintings in response to what's going on, and I just said that, what's going on personally, socially, and politically, and how these contexts inform how individuals are perceived and treated in broader society. Vivid colors and Freedom Clay's ability to capture and provoke emotion in his faceless paintings have become unique characteristics to his aesthetics. Yes, yes. As a proud, humble, and evolving artist from the South, it is his earnest hope that his work continues to interrogate and provoke wonder in the viewer, inspire life-affirming and critical conversations while addressing, responding, or reacting to disparate socio-political, and cultural issues involving human equity, race, class, gender, stigma, and sexuality. Freedom Clay's creations and photography have been on exhibit at the Carrick Modern Art Gallery, spit that out, Blue Coffee Cafe, the People's Channel at Golden Belt, Horizon, the Artistically Irrational Exhibition Series 2014 at the Center for Advanced Hindsight, and a solo exhibition celebrating the diverse beauty of Black women and girls at the LGBTQ Center of Durham. His creation, We Are All the Face of HIV/AIDS, can be seen on the cover of the February 2016 special edition Public Health Reports. The Journal of the U.S. Surgeon General focused on implementing routine HIV screening in clinical settings. This coveted creation was also on exhibit last in New York City at La Mama Galleria, curated by Jean Carlmusto, Alexandra Huhas, and Hugh Ryan. Every day explored the AIDS crisis historically and currently through the lens of artwork that looks at and examines daily experiences and practices in response to HIV/AIDS. And I hope I didn't butcher their names. North Carolina A&T State University's Lyceum Series 2017 invited Freedom Clay to do a solo exhibition showcasing his body of work celebrating the Black family. High Cotton, paying homage to and celebrating my intergenerational roots. This exhibition was also at North Carolina State University in the African American Cultural Center, Fall 2018, and at the Durham Center for Senior Life, February and March of 2019. His most solo exhibition, Reimagining Freedom, was at the Bull City Music School, Hillsborough location in 2020. My great friends, amazing artists, I welcome you to Meaningful Conversations.
Michelle, who was that person? I think I might want to meet them.
Doesn't that sound good? I know, right?
They sound pretty interesting.
Yeah, exactly. We need to go and look at the Met in New York or somewhere in, California or someplace like that, right? But I am so excited again to have you here. And as I mentioned in the intro, we all know that February is Black History Month, also the shortest month of the year, but I digress. And tonight's topic I wanted to focus on is artists as revolutionaries. And so I want to start, first of all, letting people sort of get just a glimpse behind the curtain, right? And understand and hear about your journey as an artist, what inspired you, what's your story, how did you become an artist, and also including that, well, we'll start there and we'll stop there and I'll do the second part because I think those are two very distinct questions worthy of unpacking. So how did you become an artist?
Wow, Michelle, that's such a loaded question. I guess I will start by saying I was born to create. And just to really elaborate on that, I've always been drawn to all things art related. I actually drew and painted a lot as a child as an outlet. And I also won some awards that were city and state related.
Wow.
And my mother was also, now that I think about it, she was also an art collector in her own right. With that being said, it's just something that has been a passion of mine for as long as I can remember. And when I was in undergraduate school, I took some art appreciation classes, particularly, learning some of the history of various forms of art, mostly Western. However, that's another whole conversation because this is Black History Month,
right?
And as you alluded to earlier, and I worked at the Weatherspoon Art Gallery, and at that time, I didn't know how much working at the gallery my freshman year was going to inform my path and my relationship with art in general. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was when I began to become an emerging art collector, if you will. And so over the years, Afrocentric art was really my niche. That's what I was really drawn to. For obvious reasons. I'm a Black male living in America. However, it was something about the beauty of Black art in terms of that personal, visceral connection, as well as the pride that was often expressed in the work that I saw that really drew me in terms of starting to collect art. So I went from, drawing as a kid, creating as a kid, to actually becoming more of an art collector. I started out with prints and went to limited edition prints, and then I really got into original artwork. To kind of condense this initial question, I actually had two friends of mine who really challenged me, and it was really prophetic in a lot of ways. They both said at different times, you have an eye for art, and I also really enjoy interior design, interior decorating, and, just putting things together. When are you going to start creating your own art? And so the first time I heard that, I felt actually convicted. It was like a jolt in me, but, I just kept it moving because I heard it. It stayed with me. However, I just didn't think too much of it because, again, I really enjoy collecting art and curating beautiful spaces. Then the second time I heard it from a different person, it really resonated with me. Fast forward, I was in a relationship where a former partner had ended up purchasing an art kit, and they had no idea that my history with art from the perspective of I worked in an art gallery, I used to paint and draw as a child, had won some awards, and which was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up having a space that was designated as a studio, and I began to create. And what started out as a pastime, something just to do for relaxation, became interesting to others. It was not my desire to even really post on social media, what I was doing, because it was really for me.
Right.
And so I was encouraged basically to just, show some pieces on social media. And at that time I was painting flowers. And there was a running joke. I basically went from, painting these really interesting looking flowers with vivid colors, because I also love flowers as well.
Right.
To really finding my niche in terms of portraitures and doing my interpretation of human beings. And people began to engage my work in ways that called for it being seen more. So it's still fascinating to me in terms of how individuals relate to my work and how it has gained an international presence, if you will, in the past
Right.
6 years, over 6 years. So that's kind of the skinny of it in terms of, just being a creative, I believe, from birth, and then being presented with this art kit as an adult,
Right.
less than 10 years ago, to now being an internationally, globally recognized artist.
And
So,
it's amazing. It's an amazing history when you think about our youth and how sometimes our experiences, either our parents can foster and nurture our natural gifts that end up making room for us, as scripture says. Your gifts will make room for you and bring you before great men and women. And then how some kids, it's so sad to think that some kids won't end up being a Freedom Clay or an Amanda Gorman, right? Because that talent, that natural gift and talent is suppressed and beat down.
Right.
And so I'm so glad to hear you say that your mom, helped to inspire your path and your journey to living out your purpose. Not a lot of people will leave this world having fulfilled what they were brought here to do. And part of it is because they are conditioned to try and fit into societal norms, and you created your own path, even though it may have come as an adult. That gift was still growing inside of you and manifesting. I want to ask you, what is or who are your muse or muses?
Oh, excellent question. So, humanity served as my inspiration, as my muses, if you will. Black women, Black men, children, people in general, relationships, how people engage with one another. I'm a natural observer, so just observing how people move, engage one another, what they eat, where they live.
Yeah, let me put a
what
pin right
their-
there because you can also cook. I see those. At least the pictures look good. I hope I haven't tasted it yet, but the pictures you post on your Instagram, I'm like, what? I do that
I absolutely
thing.
love to cook. Absolutely love to cook, which is a form of art.
Yeah.
For me as well. It's an expression, and you can learn a lot about people in terms of what they eat, what's the story behind what they eat, how it is prepared. Cooking for me not only is it a spiritual process, a therapeutic process for me, it's also another way for me to express and to pay homage to my ancestors, both living and those who are on the other side. So, so I would just say humanity in general. In terms of artists, I would say that Jonathan Green and Archibald Motley Jr. Have served as muses for me just in terms of their application of color. I think when I think about how I create, because I mix a lot of my colors, and that's one of the characteristics my artwork is known by, recognized by the colors. When I look at how Jonathan Green and Archibald Motley developed and applied and interacted, engaged colors in their pieces, it was almost ethereal, surreal, and miraculous in a lot of ways. And yet you still saw like the soul within their work. And so when I create, I literally hope that I'm able to translate the energy, the soul, not only in terms of what I'm bringing to it.
Right.
I also hope that I'm channeling the spirit of the person or persons, or even if they are imagined, if you will, or reimagined, I also hope that I am capturing their essence as well.
Well, let me stay there for a moment, the soul within the work, because I definitely think your work reflects that in so many ways. Why do your paintings not have faces?
I love this question, and every interview, whether it has been live or in written form, or when I've been at exhibitions or at talks, it always come up. You know,
They like,
it never
did
fails.
you forget the eyes? Did you forget?
And so it's funny that you say, "Did I forget the eyes?"
Yeah.
Because even though they are seemingly traditionally faceless,
Mm-hmm.
as you begin to engage my creations, what actually happens, which is really spiritual,
Mm-hmm.
the individual that's engaging my work oftentimes are able to see the eyes that
Yeah.
aren't visible to the natural eye, if you will.
No, yeah,
The
absolutely.
nose, the
The
mouth,
spirit
the
eye.
cheekbones. Exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. You begin to formulate those features that are not seen with quote unquote the naked eye, and they become very real and very vivid. So I always say, while it appears that my paintings, my creations are faceless, they really aren't once you begin to engage them. And prior to even speaking on that in various settings, I've always been moved and humbled by those engaging my work, actually articulating that experience in terms of their engagement with my work. So, and to answer that question from another perspective, Michelle, it's just that's what I was just organically drawn to. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to give you a quick story in terms of how I really found my niche. Jet Magazine. A lot of people
Oh
are
yeah.
familiar with Jet Magazine. If
It was
you were
like the Bible in
born,
black folks' home, right? Everybody had one.
exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. It was known as the gossip rag of its time.
Mm-hmm.
However, towards, particularly for black culture.
Mm-hmm.
So all things black, beautiful, sometimes a little salacious, you would be able to find what you were looking for in Jet. And, of course, they were known for the Jet Beauties as well. So towards the end of their tenure, one of the last publications that they produced was on missing black children.
Mm.
And so, given my background, in social work, public health, having a passion for social justice and human equity, I was so moved that Jet decided to publish an article with so much social relevance, response
Mm-hmm.
that was undergirded in responsibility and accountability. Because what we know typically, and not just domestically here in the States, but also abroad, when black children go missing, what typically happens? And that's a question for you.
For me,
Yeah. What typically
nothing.
happens? Exactly.
Right. We don't see. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
If they aren't found within the first 24 to 48 hours, and really 24 hours, the likelihood that they are going to be found alive is very slim,
Right.
number one. And then number two, the coverage has been basically non-existent,
Right.
which speaks to not acknowledging our value and our
Yep.
worth as human beings.
I'm glad you're
And
mentioning that because I have coming on the show in March, which is Women's History Month, someone who's going to
yeah,
talk about sex trafficking. And we're
hmm
going to get into some of that, how some of these girls end up, and, women, but some of these young girls end up in sex trafficking and human trafficking rings because, they are dismissed. Their absence and disappearance is dismissed as, oh, they're just back in the day, the old folk used to say they just fast, they ran away, they just, promiscuous or what have you. And so there's also a question about their possibility of being victimized, right? Or versus,
exactly, or further
so,
victimized in
absolutely.
terms of
So I'm glad
that.
you mentioned that. So that gave me a chance to plug one of our March segments.
Oh, that's going to be exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. So to go to your point, it's asinine, it's nonsensical, because
Right.
what that does, it reinforces the lack of coverage that doesn't happen in the media. Because if they were intentional about reporting missing children like they do if Susie May went missing or David Lee went missing, it would be a whole different
Absolutely.
turnout
Yep.
in ball game. And so the fact that they covered this story and brought this national awareness to missing Black children, not only was I on cloud 9,
Mm-hmm.
given how well they covered the topic, I was also moved by the silhouette
Mm.
that they had on that particular cover. And it was a little girl in pigtails.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up actually doing my own interpretation in response to that article, as well as the silhouette. So that's the story.
That's one of your first
I know
pieces
you
that
had
I
an aha
saw.
moment. Absolutely.
Oh,
Little
my
Girl
goodness.
True
Yeah.
has become an international phenomenon.
Yeah.
Little Girl True resonates with everyone. Her engagement transcends color. It transcends
Yep.
gender. It transcends ethnicity. It transcends age.
Mm-hmm.
So she has this intergenerational appeal, and particularly for Black girls and Black women. However, I've just been in awe in terms of the response that she has with people just in general,
Right.
with Black men, Black boys, because they see their sisters, they see their mothers, Black men see their daughters,
Yeah.
Black men see their daughters. So it's she has really transcended boundaries as it relates to how she has connected with just people in general. So talk about that,
So.
the value and the pulse of humanity
Mm-hmm.
and the touch that she has had. It literally, she has become like this internationally recognized painting, and she is in places pretty much around the world now. It's interesting because when I initially painted Little Girl True, someone could have purchased her for, Michelle, like $300.
Mm-hmm.
Now she is not for sale
Right.
at all
Right.
at this point.
Yeah.
I say that, and it took me a long time to add like a monetary value to my work, just because I didn't do it
Yeah.
to make money. It was never ever about that.
Yeah.
And I had to quickly put on my business hat, which I definitely have when it related to my art, because I it's just, that wasn't my relationship.
Well, you definitely
or
do.
my orientation to the art, and so I call her my $1 million baby.
Absolutely.
Now.
I remember
So,
we were over in Golden Belt, I want to say. Me and Allison, we were working on the Links project, but I remember we were there. You did a showing there, and I showed up. But it's so funny because that Freedom Clay and today's Freedom Clay is definitely, different. You're like, friend or not, this is X amount of dollars. There are no friend hookups. No, sorry, no, bye girl, bye boo. I want to say my mother-in-law really enjoyed you when we came to high point. And so we'll talk about that towards the end. But you've really gone into the next question, and that is how art can be transformative on a personal, a community, and even socio-political level, right? And so you've touched a
Right.
little bit on that. And let me say so I'm a writer. I don't do it as much as I should, but I've been writing since, grade school too. And stopped for a while, went through and have gone through, but I'm coming out thanks to one of my besties, Dr. Donna Marie Wynn Taylor, who keeps saying, girl, what is your problem? Get yourself together. I felt the same way. I had an aha moment when I discovered Alex Haley's beginnings. In his initial works, he wrote for Playboy magazine. And so in researching that, there's a book that I have at home. And actually Dr. Harry Amana at UNC, he was teaching in the J School at UNC, and I took the Black Media or Black Press, or I forget the name of the class, under Dr. Harry Amana, and he turned me on to Alex Haley's work in body of work in Playboy magazine. And I thought Playboy magazine was like what it was, but
Exactly. Most people don't realize that they had a lot of when we talk about the academy and the type of articles that they had in there. They were very scholarly, very cerebral.
Absolutely.
So
Jet and Playboy magazine had
True
more
readers
value
know
than
that.
that, right? Than
It meets
what was
the
something.
eye, literally.
That's right. That's right. So, but artists as revolutionaries, I consider you one in so many ways. I've seen you move. I've been in your space, and been honored for us to create this authentic, deep relationship where we can call each other at the last minute and say, what's your problem, girl? You need to get, And so there's another story behind that, everybody.
People that you love.
Yeah, you can only do that with people that you love. That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
You have to hold them accountable.
You have to hold them accountable. And I thank you for doing that for me always. Because if there's somebody I know that will say, that red fingernail polish got to go. And when I think I'm looking cute, to say, no, boo, no, you ain't looking cute. You looking halfway messed.
So,
but
that's what it is.
It is
becoming correct.
Yeah,
when I know that you can. Yeah, I'm gonna get you.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. I appreciate friends like that who won't let me be out here just looking any kind of way and my stuff all raggedy. Which brings me, I know I said the transformative question, but artists, it takes a lot of ego or self-esteem. I don't know what it is, but were you ever in your earlier years was there just something inside of you that said, I don't care whether people like it or not? What made you want to take that risk? And I think that's important also for any young kids that are up listening to this or watching it on Facebook. I know they don't even do Facebook, but what made you? Were there moments when you were afraid of what people might think of your work? Because it really was and is to this day beautifully unique and just awe-inspiring. But that takes some guts to be different.
Excellent question, and I really like the way that you framed the question for so many reasons. So you mentioned ego. And initially I was like, quite the opposite, and which is really true, meaning that for me, creating is such a humbling process because I may have a vision or an idea, and it may not necessarily turn out as I envision, which is the most beautiful transformation, if you will, and just leaning into that process, because even though I am behind the brush and I have this idea, even with my colors, you don't control the final product. I mean, you play a role in terms of the direction and the strokes. However, in terms of the final product, it's going to be what it's going to be. So you have to just really lean in to that process. Now, where the ego can come in is when your work is being critiqued.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't take the critique of my work seriously. I really don't. So when my work is praised for whatever reason, I am humbled by it, and I would say I appreciate it. However, that I don't need that in terms of restoring me, if you will, to fill my cup back up, because that's not the reason I create. I don't ever want to be a puppet in terms of what I produce. Hence, the reason I really do not like, and I get this quite often, and I typically don't share it with people unless I have a really close relationship with them. I really don't like when people say to me, you really should consider painting so-and-so, because that's not how I create.
Right.
Unless we're having a conversation about a potential commission piece, which is a whole nother conversation within the confines of my aesthetic, which allows me to be free in terms of how I create. I really don't take too kindly to that kind of feedback, because for me it isn't constructive.
Right.
And the flip side of that is I don't really care. It's none of my business what people ultimately think of my work. With that being said, what I do appreciate in terms of part of my legacy, and this has been said actually several times, that your work will be studied in ways that will advance humanity, the art, and I'm honored by that, because that's one of the reasons I create, because what we know when we talk about what's going on politically, what's going on socially, what's going on fiscally, a lot of these conversations can be very hard, because oftentimes these conversations can be rooted in oppression. And when we start talking about oppression, we can get into all the intersections of how oppression shows up in terms of race, ethnicity, sexuality, sexual orientation, economic status, so on and so forth. We can go on and on and on in terms of how all of these sections, if you will, in terms of existence can actually collide. And so one of the things that I know about art just in general, and that has definitely been one of the personal aims when I create, is for my artwork to ignite, to inspire, encourage conversations that ordinarily would not be had organically with people just having conversation, or it can even be on the agenda, but it's still very difficult to have conversations about certain topics, particularly when they are rooted in individual belief systems. And so art has a beautiful way, a very sophisticated yet simple way of being able to ignite these conversations, because it's like a visual medium, if you will. They don't come with the baggage that human beings do. And so it's easier to begin to have conversations around a piece that may bring up or conjure up feelings around oppression, around racial identity, around one's place in society, their relationships with other people, or with the criminal injustice system, So, I mean,
Which is
I
why I
could go
say it's
on and on and on.
yeah, no, absolutely. Which is why I say artists are revolutionaries, right? Because
Yes,
they
absolutely.
force us to look at our society and in a way that we can't ignore it. We can't turn our face away from a picture that's so, or a painting that's, and a portrait, or we couldn't take our eyes off of the television set during inauguration, listening to Amanda Gorman as she, blessed us with her profound and prolific and just deep critique of where we were and where we are, but gave us hope in terms of what lies in the horizon. So artists are revolutionaries, right? Because a beautiful piece you just can't walk away from. There's something about it
Absolutely.
that compels you to purchase it or to stand there and study it. It's amazing.
Right.
It's amazing.
They
And
can art.
even reading, I tell you, Isabel Wilkerson's book, Cast. So many people. I mean, it was part of a book club that I'm a part of. That one of my good friends, who is a Caucasian female. She said, we're reading Cast. And I'm thinking, okay, I heard about it. Oprah talked about it. People are talking about it. And I was like, good gosh, this book is so thick. I don't have a whole lot of time. It's too many pages. But it was written so well. It was so well written and researched. And she just laid the pieces of the American caste system together so well, and just with this prudent, she was very prudent and astute and critic in her analysis, and yet very scholarly. But it was so
And
easy to read.
captivating. It
It
sounds
was
like
yeah,
it was very captivating. It
yeah.
held
So
your attention,
art,
like art can.
yeah,
And,
right.
writing is a form of art.
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely.
So let's think about today and where we are. We know the civil and social unrest. We know the political divides. Who are the artists that you think are really speaking today? Like, I don't know if you heard the intro. My favorite artists, in terms of a group or in the collective, are the artists of the Harlem Renaissance. I mean, I've always just been, a huge fan and student of that era, all things Harlem during that period. And
Right.
so today, who are the artists that you're following that are really, you really feel are getting it? They're using their craft as revolutionaries.
Oh wow, another great question.
Well, that's what I
So-
do. That's why I'm just.
Yeah.
That's what I do. Thank you. We're having meaningful conversations. So I want it to be something worth people's time listening to. Yeah. So tell us, who do you think? Who are you following?
So
Observing, studying.
believe it or not, because I appreciated that question was really open ended.
Mm-hmm.
James Baldwin's
Mm-hmm.
impact is it's almost
Oh, it's like it'll never die. It's
fathomable in terms of the impact his work is having right here, right now,
right.
in so many places and spaces. And he's no longer physically with us. However, the legacy of his body of work was so timeless in terms of the messaging, because James Baldwin, and this is where people get it twisted and wrong, he wasn't before his time.
Mm. Right.
Society wasn't ready to fully embrace his humanity. And
Right.
he chose to exercise his humanity in spite of.
Right.
And so he is definitely one of the luminaries
Mm-hmm.
who is continuing to create and evolve spaces even after his physical passing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Michelle Obama, and it's interesting because
Mm-hmm.
one would necessarily see her as your um, typical creative.
Mm-hmm.
However, she is not only is she a prolific writer,
Mm-hmm.
a really excellent writer. She is an amazing storyteller,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yep.
is a gift. Her husband is as well. President Obama, Barack Obama is as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's an incredible storyteller. It's one thing to be able to write, and it goes back to Cast, the book that you were talking about
Mm-hmm.
earlier, but it's another thing to be able to captivate, to
That's
be
right.
able to draw individuals in.
And you know
And
where you know why I think that is, and I see that and I believe that's true in the work that you create, also in your writings, in your wisdom, your the way in which you are able to, and your style, your fashion, your I mean, it's because it's authenticity is hard to imitate, and it's hard to ignore, right? It's hard to dismiss. It's hard to when people come show up as themselves and who they were meant to be, doing what they're meant to be doing, walking in all of that glory, that light that comes from us being free, unbound spiritually and mentally and emotionally. I think the worst prison you can be captive in, is the internal one, the one that forces you to look out into the world and have other people, you're behind bars in within yourself because others have held you captive or in bondage by their criticism, by what they think you should be doing and what you do. You and Michelle Obama and the President Barack Obama, Amanda Gormans of the world, the James Baldwins. I mean, I love people who are walking in their own uniqueness and their true authentic identity, and they're not covered or wearing masks. So you do that. And so we've got a few more minutes. I want to ask you.
thank you for that. I really appreciate that
No, you
because
do. Oh, I wouldn't,
authenticity.
trust me, I would not have been drawn to you. I mean, you do because yes, yes. I'm always like, yes, yes, yes.
It takes
Um,
courage to show up
it
as
does.
ourselves and to be ourselves.
Oh
And
boy,
we
doesn't
live
it?
in such a um,
Yeah.
saturated culture as it relates to technology and social media. Um, it's it's rare that you find individuals who are showing up as themselves.
Yeah.
Because it's because of the way our world is moving. It's easier to almost, like you said, wear a mask or to uh, really to just immerse yourself in a culture without really just kind of diluting yourself into a culture. You're really not adapting but assimilating. There's a lot of assimilation. That's the word I want to use. There's a
Absolutely.
lot of assimilation today because of seemingly the short-term gains.
Right. That's right.
And I would stop there. The short-term gains, and so it's few and far between when you see people who show up in ways that are meaningful, like
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
topic, meaningful discussions,
Mm-hmm.
where you can truly build on um, their offerings in a way that's not microwavable. It's
Right.
more sustainable in terms of how the preparation occurs.
Right. I want to, Alice Walker, and I mentioned this quote early on. I want to leave our listeners with just a few things to think about, and I hope that you have truly found this a meaningful conversation. Alice Walker stated, or I quote, healing begins where the wound was made. And so I encourage all of us not to, ignore the wounds from our traumas and our past, but to start there and begin to heal, because there is a whole life is for the living, and it's
Absolutely.
waiting for you to deposit and to use your gifts. And so many people are not walking in their true purpose and not using their gifts because we are wounded. And I believe I'm a wounded healer, but I thank God that I'm healing from the wounds, and I'm past the stage of being in bondage. And I try every day to live out what God has asked me and called me to do. And then Maya Angelou, in The Heart of the Woman, wrote, if one is lucky, a solitary fantasy can totally transform 1 million realities. And I think that's what you do with your work. Your work is indeed transformative. You are indeed a revolutionary artist. And I am so glad to call you my friend. I want to ask you one last question before we end. And we've got like 1 minute. What is your message to your younger self and to aspiring artists?
Wow. I would say to my younger self, know, KNOW, know that you were born to have a fully human experience.
Wow.
And I think that's important because having a human experience is not about perfection.
Right.
It's about being able to fail forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's about being able to learn, to grow, to celebrate, to mourn, experience joy, experience sadness, to have a fully human experience. Because when we allow ourselves or to fully embrace our human experience, it's then and only then that I believe that we can truly receive and embrace the following of whatever you believe is higher than yourself.
That's
For
wonderful.
me,
I'm getting the signal for us to, I love you. Freedom Clay, you have been amazing, an amazing guest. My cup is overflowing right now. So thank you, my friend.
My pleasure.
Continue
My pleasure.
to bless this world with your great art and continue to be you. You are a revolutionary in my mind. And those are the folk I love to roll with and hang out with. So I want to thank everyone, beautiful people. We are wrapping up tonight's show. Thank you. You can follow us or follow me on Instagram at Michelle Laws 007, on Twitter at Michelle Law 7. My handle is Jesus Take the Wheel. Also, you can go to our YouTube page, but definitely tune in every Thursday night at 9 o'clock on Oak 93.5. Follow us on Facebook. Follow the Oak 93.5 on Facebook. Like that page. Connect to my page. And we will see you next week, or talk with you next week, and have another meaningful conversation. This show will also be featured on Spotify on my Meaningful Conversations podcast. Thank you. Peace and blessings. Take care of yourself. We are out.
Community Radio, WRLYLP.